principle thinking, right? Students have more first principle thinkings. Obviously, that's why it's high risk, high reward. Like how much of first principle thinkings versus how much can they learn, be open to learn. It's that balance. You want to be disruptive, but how much can you also learn? And all of this will make way more sense once this is a book by a guy called Jeffrey Moore. He wrote this in 1980 or something. It's like the Bible for product and product marketing and market understanding. So I'm not giving you something which is a special hidden book. It's once you figure out about it, read about it, you'll be like what happened to me. I read it about 3 years ago, and I said how could I not know about this? This freaking thing was written, 25 years ago, and everybody speaks about it. It's one of the top 10 Inc. books for marketing all time. It's almost like people have forgotten that the book was. That's how old it is, but that's how true it is still. Because as long as humans are the ones buying, it doesn't change, right? Whatever products, services, humans are buying. That.
Okay, first question that I wanna ask Samay is, what's the story of Acute? And Acute is a club that when I entered BITS, it was a remarkable club in BITS who would only take geniuses into the club. Yeah, how did it start? What's the story of that?
So, Acute has quick one. I think first when I went to school or Pilani at that time, right? This is going to sound pretty strange now because things change a lot in 10 years. But Pilani actually used to not take part in any competitions outside, and it was. I don't know how it is today, but what I've heard is it's dramatically. I mean, even when in the 4 years we were there, I think it evolved a lot, right? I think it says some credit goes to Acute and all of the stuff that we did, but at the whole, before that, right, it was very in-focused, right? So Pilani had AcYut, right? We would all take part at AcYut, right? So basically what happened was we built, in my first year, me and a small team, we built a robot, which was a waiter robot called Bitsimo, right? For AcYut, right? And it ended up, we had 4 competitions. So I don't know what AcYut has today, but AcYut used to have things like open hardware, open software, best product, best research, this thing. So different categories. We basically could fit in the robot in four categories of the in AcYut that you can apply for, nominate for. Different judges would go through. We ended up coming first in all 4 of them, right? So in some sense, it was a great moment, right? For me and AcYut, he was the co-founder or my partner in crime, right? In that time, right? So when AcYut and I did it, we ended up coming, first in all of those, right? When we ended up coming first, right? We kind of said, it's almost it's a really good result, but it was too good a result, right? In some sense, we were first year rights. We were okay, this is there. So we said, hey, let's figure out how do we increase, find the competition to go to. So literally, I think we found out from there that there was a competition called Shastra, which is at IIT Madras's Tech Fest, right? And they had a hovercraft, built. What wasn't robots wasn't there very common at that time. I think now it's came up a lot over the next 4-5 years as things changed. But we had a hovercraft to be built, and we wanted to go for it, right? And we literally went and applied for this is first year end or second year start, applied for a makeup because it was during one of the mid-sems, right? And actually the professor said, no, they literally, I remember the person, I don't want to, quote him because he'll feel bad about it all these years later out of context. But he said something on the lines of, they don't come here, so why should we go there, right? So we said, okay, fair enough, but I actually don't care. I really want to go for that competition. So, we actually went. We actually missed the test. That he didn't give a makeup for it. We were a little krantikari, as you call it, at them, because we didn't realize we had made the hovercraft, everything was ready, and we said like, like makeups, like people get makeups for being sick, people get makeups for like whatever reasons, right? It's a pretty genuine, like, like here's like a IIT Madras organized competition. We've been selected, we are going, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so we ended up going, we ended up coming, I think, third there, right? So that was good. I think 4-5 months later, again, then went to Tech Fest, which is IIT Bombay's competition. This time, I think, took part in about 3 competitions, right? There. Basically ended up coming anywhere between second, third, right, in this thing of the competitions. One thing we didn't like a lot about those competitions in hindsight was that they were very restricted over, like, you can only use these components. It needs to, I guess it's, like, I don't know the background, but like they were very restrictive as to like, okay, use only this, use this to make this, do this, right? So we did well, but actually what happened and sorry for the long background, but basically at that moment, having come second, third, first in all these competitions, it was a little bit of a pivotal moment for us, right? Because we said, okay, either we are, born geniuses or there's something really wrong with competition, right? Like that can't be, because, like if you think about it, and I say this even till today, I don't think we were doing engineering or deep product work or like, work also. We were doing jugaad, like, we were putting it together. The most important thing was it would run, right? Like that was what I thought was our competitive edge, right? Most people, and in engineering students, especially first yearites, second yearites, get so carried away by, like, is this getting intellectual satisfaction or not, that whether it runs on the last day or not doesn't actually matter. We were really good at that, right? Like we said, we'll make sure we practice to make sure it runs, right? But we were a little self-aware. We're like, okay, that's all we do. How can we, be this second, third, and all that stuff? So we said the only way to find this out, right, is that let's go find, the biggest competition, right? We can go participate in, and like we've done this 2-3 ladders, right? Like we've done Apogee, we've done Shastra, we've done Tech Fest, right? Like let's just skip all of this stuff and let's go this thing. So literally a Google search, right, at that time was like biggest robotic competition or something, or maybe biggest competitions, and there's something called Robo Olympics that came up. Right? Okay. It's now called Robo Games, but Robo Olympics came up, right? And so Robo Olympics is like the Olympics for robots. You have about 30 countries that come, about 50 different games or competitions, right? And it's still there. I mean, if you look it up, you'll see. So it was a lot of fun, right, to look at. This is all YouTube videos and this stuff. We haven't gone there. This thing. So we said, if that's the one, let's find a really interesting competition. So inside, amongst the list, right, we had something called humanoid kung fu, right? So obviously we didn't even know the edge of humanoid, right? Which like really cool. Like okay, and you have to remember from our mindset, we're like, just want to figure this out. Like how good are we really, right? So this seemed like the most interesting, most complex, right, thing to do. So there, we're very excited. We start preparing for it, right? And we actually ended up going to our professor, right, at that time. This is a different now, the professor who was working with us in the lab, right, as such. And this professor actually told us, and rightly so, I'll tell you the backstory later, but he said, Samay, you're not supposed to do all of this in your second year, right, in college. You're supposed to, why don't you concentrate, study hard, so that you can go to grad school abroad, and that's where you're supposed to do all of these things, right? Now, I guess just young and naive, we were just super, just excited about okay, if he's saying we can't do it, then we have to do it, right? And and in the back end, right, he was giving really good advice, because from his point, in whatever humanoid robots that were being built, the lab was actually trying to build humanoid robots, the BITS robotics lab. Like there is later, 6 months later, people showed me skeletons of literally humanoid robots in the back, like being tried to make for like the last decade, motors and this thing, like literally lying there. So it was not like, like everybody who thinks I'm the first one doing it, right?
Yeah.
It was there. So, but it was literally a graveyard for like 4-5 times it had been tried to make, and obviously it was not successful, right? So he was just being, he was probably giving the right advice, but to me and AcYut, we were like, this is like a challenge, right?
Yeah.
This is not about, this is like, can we do this or not? So that kind of started. But I'll tell you, we won't exist today had it not been, because now this is like, so far all the competitions we had done, we had just, pooled money, within ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
And we would pool the money in and we'll start doing the motion, right? And, like in some sense, if we needed to have more money, we'll be like, we need to get more people in the team, right? Because that was our resources. AcYut was a whole, this is 2007 or so, right? So this is 2007. I think we need anywhere between $40,000-$50,000 to just get, started on it. So we wouldn't exist if it was not for the BITS Silicon Valley chapter, right? So I remember this as to, we didn't know, and by the way, all of this funding started, I really think it started with AcYut. It's the first time Pilani alumni actually really engaged in anything non-philanthropic, right? Like they were doing philanthropic things at Pilani, but actually investing, in a project. And that was it was quite controversial for them also, because I know people said, oh, we're just investing behind 5 people, 6 people. Isn't it better we should give this money to the college, right? But for some people, and 2 of them were Raju Reddy and Viggy Mokrala. They were 2 people in the valley. They just literally said, no, this is what you guys. So we met them over Zoom. Didn't obviously exist, so Skype, I guess. And there was a alumni Siri who connected us to him. So anyways, rest is history. But they really were the ones who were like, okay, guys, what are you doing? What do you need? One alumni came up and actually funded. He was in Continental Airlines, so he funded the flight for all 5 of us, right, as a sponsorship from Continental Airlines. We put their logo on the robot, right? We had another sponsor for 1 or 2 alum. We were like, okay, can we put the logo on the chest? And I don't think they were really getting advertisement, but whichever way they could support, right?
Yeah. Okay, I want to double click on one thing. When you were raising money for this $15,000, at that time, were you talking about starting a company in the future? How did you, or was it pure sponsorship? Let's just brand it.
Pure sponsorship. Yeah, absolutely.
So when did it occur?
By the way, we didn't even think about. The story on why we started up is you'll have to wait for it to come, but it will come soon. But it had nothing at that time. We had no, we wanted to actually go do a job after this, but we were really enjoying what we did. So this was all this for fun. This is 100% for fun. We're just think about it. We're building stuff. We're winning competitions, traveling the world, building new stuff. All the stuff which everybody's saying. It's kind of very similar thrill to. When initially startups are not businesses, they become eventually businesses, right? But it's passion, of you do it because you're just so much fun. You can go do things you can be changing. And, and in India, if you think about that time, right? Nobody goes out for any of these competitions. Now we're at the India stage, right? And, just going there, right? Representing India in a competition, it's almost this thing. And I'll tell you, it was really, really tough at that time, but in hindsight, that was the fun of it, right? Because if you think about when we started, sure, the money we arranged, we got, right? All of that money came into the institute accounts, right? I don't know how it is today, but back then, right, any money comes into the institute, right? It has to be bought through a tender process and 3 vendor systems, right? So we're like, wait a minute, what? We want to just buy these motors. We just want to do this. We just got this money from outside. They're like, okay, so, like, then we started getting half of the money. We said, we don't want money. Can you please buy? That's why Continental we said, can you please give us the airline tickets? Please don't give the money because we can't, we can't probably book the tickets also. So, really, I mean, you have to remember this is, Pilani changed a lot, I feel, touchwood, because of all of this, we were in Hindi, I would call it the Krantikaris, the revolutionaries. Like we were really blessed, right? I would say there were 3 professors. I don't think that all 3 of them are there, Pilani, anymore. But at that time, Professor Mittal, of course, was the main person, right, who was supporting us. There was Professor Ravi Prakash and Professor N. Sharma. I think all 3 of them are not there. But so they were very their blessings were there, right? Like, hey, go do it, right? And I would say for them also, they turned believers, right? Like they're like, we'll go to this competition, we'll do it. And first you want to be good to kids, and you're like, okay, yes, I want to come. But when they saw, okay, these guys are actually serious, they're doing it, they became tremendous supporters, and that. But I will tell you, there was a huge group of, people and professors at that time, I was telling me, why are you spoiling your careers? Why are you spoiling your life? Why are you spoiling, eventually, in the next year, we ended up getting first year rights, second year rights by the time I got into third. So I remember this one professor outside one lab telling me, Samay, why are you spoiling? Literally, तुम्हारा तो ठीक होगा, तुम ये first year rights और second year rights का career क्यों spoil कर रहे हो? Right? As such, so it's not because they didn't mean bad, but it was just not the path traveled. It just all of this seems so different today, but we were the first ones at that time, right? So if you think about it, people ho kya rahe, right? Ye kar kya rahe ho, right? You're beating. It's no different than any, when you're building an industry or changing this thing. Everybody is you change scares people, right? And they meant all the right things. I think even the professor who said, we'll not give you a makeup and don't go it, right? For him, he genuinely thought कोई ये जाने से कुछ फायदा नहीं होता है, and ये लोग पढ़ेंगे नहीं तो फिर career खराब कर लेंगे अपना, right? So it's not, it's not spiteful, but was not easy, right? Everything was there. So let me accelerate a little bit, right, given the time. But so this happened. We went for the competition. We ended up coming 10th, right, out of 30 countries, right, which is the best. In hindsight, I always think it's the best thing we could have ever done, 9th or 10th, something like that, right? Because actually what happened in the back was that if we would have ended up coming 15 or 15, 20, right, at that, I think we would have just literally said, yeah, boss, this is not, not for us. Everybody's saying the right thing. Let's go back to the books and study. And we, we don't. And you have to remember, Abhishek, it's Robo Olympics, it's an important thing to remember. Robo Olympics is not a college university competition. It's an open competition. That means some of the robots were people, 40-year-olds who are doing this as their weekend projects, and they're advanced engineers in robotic companies like Boeing, and we had this is a open competition, right? So anybody can build a humanoid and get it. This is not a age barriered or a university student barriered and country barriered this thing, right? So it's the real, we really were bold, but also this is the wild west. This is the biggest thing we could have put ourselves in, because this is not done. This is done for fun, right? So we went there, right? In that group, right? Us actually coming still this 9th, 10th, right? Helped that we didn't kill our motivation. But I'll tell you also what it did is changed us, because had we come in the top 5, right, we would have got too cocky with ourselves, right? We're acha, we are the, we are the undisputed champions. Jugaad se hi hota hai. Because after that, is when I think really our product and engineering journey started off like, okay, like we're good, right? But we have to work very hard, right, to do it. And then obviously alumni continued supporting. We ended up representing India in about 13 countries in the next 2 years or so, right? And we even went back to that competition, I think 2 years later finally, right? Next year we came better, bronze. Then 2 years later we finally, I think, got 1 gold, 2 silver, 1 bronze, like basically sweet, right? Okay. We've arrived, it took this thing and then moved on to another autonomous soccer, right? So we did that for 4 years. Every year was a new robot version that was released, right? That's why you have, like, I think they have it in the labs, Pilani is still, but you have like Acute 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and after us there. Another thing you talked about, like, how this was a club when you joined. It was a club which was like coveted, and so somewhere in my 3rd year, right? So we had gone to the competition, we had come back, right? And by now, like, think of it as there's a lot of fanfare, right? Like, this is all great and everything is, like, we're top of the world, right? Like, for India, we're like, we just went to the Olympics, even participating is awesome. We come in the front of the, I think, Hindustan Times ke cover page pay or something, so it's pretty cool, right? But we come back, right? And reality, and so one of the other biggest supporters, right? More naysayer, he'll be like the one who keeps saying nahi hoga, but biggest supporter also was actually, I think he's retired now, but he used to head the lab, called Tulsi Ram sir, right? So Tulsi Ram sir actually said one thing, right, to me. While I was walking out of the lab, and when we came back from the competition, he said, Samay, ये सब बहुत सही है, right? But anyways, जब तक तुम हो ये है, जब तुम नहीं रहोगे तो नहीं रहेगा, right? So I didn't understand. I said, Tulsi Ram sir, क्यों बोल रहे हो? Like, why are you saying this, right? He's like, नहीं, एक को, I think he used to tell us stories, like एक को नेगी होते थे, एक ये होते थे. जब वो आए थे 1-2 साल तो क्या काम होता था, फिर वो चले जाते थे. पता नहीं, I don't know why this just hit me so deeply that like, I can't be doing all of this, like, and it can't just die, like, like, we're starting a movement here, right? So it all just changed. It's almost like, that's why I call this my first startup, because like, it's just like you're literally building. That's like, we just got our Series A, we got new funding, we're just going at it. So everything changed. We went in for 3-stage institutionalized interview process to get in. Right? So blind test hoga, right? Written test hoga, फिर interview test hoga, right? Like, this thing, ऐसे ये institute बनेगा, right? Like computers in the lab, right? We used to just manage, in we would pull our laptop तो नहीं होते थे, but our desktop from our rooms, we'll get them in. So we're just managing with this, right? We're like, no. Right now, we're going to fight internally in the institution and get all the equipment upgraded, right? Like, we just literally, it was a mission to say, how do we build this sustainably, right? So that you actually Acute stays, right? And I think they finally, because of COVID, this thing finally stopped. I heard something in 2020, right? It stopped, right? Finally graduated or whatever. And that's 10 years after we left. Right? Because we graduated in 2009-10, right? So if you think about it, that was how important it became, right? So first 2-3 years was alumni sponsorship, right? Then became pure company sponsorship. To when we left, it became government, SBI, VC sponsored. So like, all of this was so important. That are you building a sustainable company which stays there or not, right? And, obviously, I think Acute is made, if I'm not mistaken, anywhere from almost close to 150 people over the years have come out of that. And, and I meet them all here and there, and they're like, like, it's been such a changing moment for them. So that's kind of what Acute was about, right? That was the fun stuff that we did.
from our batch and used to say, if your BitStat score is below 400 out of 450, you probably can't get into Acute. It was that. This is just.
But after that, it must have just kept evolving because it's just, remember first year when we opened up applications. So we put up technically, I don't know if you know, but I don't know if they did it eventually. This was not a formal club, right? Like we just Dopey used to be there, Lights were, all of these were formal clubs, right? So this was not there, but we are like, we're just going to follow all the, so, we went up and all the messes put up our own, I didn't ask anybody, we just put up our own notices that come to FD 2 on this time if you like to be considered for, this thing. 250 people showed up, right? And we had to we're like, okay, we need 3 was what we were thinking. And then we said, acha, 5, right? So we took 5. Next year, right, 410 people showed up, right? Wow. So we're like, okay, I think we took 6, right? So I don't remember but the institute, it's that demand and supply. If your market, people wanted to do this, they love what it was. It takes off because you're doing stuff in it. And so what you're saying now, if it became you have to be smart and intelligent, it was natural. It was just because the demand was high and the supply was low, right? To be given. I went back to Pilani to get this award a couple of months ago, and they showed me the new workshop, and I'm missing the professor's name, and he was there then also. He was in charge of the workshop. I'm gonna now hate it for not remembering, but he showed how they're using so we were the first users of CNC machine in Pilani, right? It used to be used for demo, right? And we said we'll figure it out how we do it. We were the first ones to use. There's this research project and they got a 3D printer in the corner, and nobody used to use it, and it was whenever state visits for people बाहर से आते थे तो दिखाया देखो ये चलता है हमारी 3D printer है ये है. हम after hours we would go started using it and he showed that he's no, you guys just changed it and they were literally 30 CNC machines there. There were 10 this thing in this thing workshop, and so kind of him. But he said, and he showed on the present, he's no, after AcYut there is no this thing, and and of course AcYut and then eventually GreyOrange, right? The fact the biggest thing that is needed for change. One is obviously we were doing that, but as you asked, right, we weren't doing it for a company. So I don't think anybody the biggest doubters at that time were, these guys will spoil their career because this will not happen. And to some degree, I'll tell you our story of why we started up. In some sense, they were not wrong because even recruiters were not looking for them, right? But the interesting thing, right, was that GreyOrange's success eventually, right, and starting in this thing said, there is a career, there's a path, and there's stuff that you learn, right? So then it changed, because it's all about the first ones are the toughest, right? And what follows is the fun, right? It gives so much energy, right? Akash, I know Arpit, right? All the guys, from that time, Sushma, I'll not do justice there, but all of them to actually see what changes is so immense. So we're almost on time. So let me get you the question you asked about why did we start GreyOrange and AcYut. So AcYut was great, right? As part of AcYut, we started going to these universities, presenting the robot stuff as we go for these. So we'll go to the competition in the US. On the way back, we'll visit 1 or 2 universities, show the robots, right? It started. So one professor with Salem offered us saying, hey, we want to come for a summer internship in University of Louisiana at Lafayette. So Arun, when he offered us that, we said, well, absolutely, why would we not take it? So we went there, right? as part of that, right, like we actually created a PS2 station there, right? And I stayed back and I did my PS2 in Lafayette, Louisiana, right? Then I did my thesis. My PS was about 9 months, so longer than 6. So I didn't have enough time. Then I went and did my thesis in Korea, because the company we were buying these motors from, right, they were so intrigued that nobody in India is buying, so it was in South Korea. So they said, if you guys are looking for an internship, we'll be really open for it. So we went and I did a thesis. Technically, I didn't write a proper thesis, by the way, but technically I was working in this internship in robotics, right? So when I came back, right, when I was sitting for campus placement, 2 things happened, right? One, all these people, right? So in Lafayette, we had in Germany, in Korea, they all like offered us jobs, right? Like they're like, hey, if you want to work, why don't you do this? So it's not like the job prospect was this thing, but we were very clear of we're doing this for fun. We want to get some experience and eventually can start up. So it's not like we didn't have startup things, but I don't know why. And you have to remember, this is 2009, 10, right? Flipkart has not happened, which happens in 15. It's not cool to start out, right? Like it's right? It's like, so we were like, we didn't want to start up, but our biggest thing was we were very homesick. So by the way, at Pilani, this is a thing I don't know, like people hearing about this will probably laugh, but Pilani, I think, is the only campus amongst even BITS, but also amongst any of the premier institutes in India, which does not have attendance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So we spent in including the PS2 internship, all of this, we spent almost close to 600 days, right, in those 5, think of it as 3.5 years or so, right, outside the country, right? We're going to Korea, we're going to Japan, we're going to Germany, we're going to, Istanbul, we're going, we're
also
going...
exam?
Huh?
Also made the exam?
I think never compris.
Never compris, okay.
So, but grades went obviously down because we ended up missing. We tried doing as much as possible, and people became kinder to us and giving makeups eventually, except some people who held it as their moral duty to protect the system from converting, right, in their own right. So, apart from some professors who just said, these guys are doing wrong, they're going to spoil other people's careers if I let this happen. Most people gave this thing. We never missed, I think, except one, I think, which we got a makeup for, but never missed end sem exam, because as it goes in Pilani, you can only fail if you get did not give enough opportunity to be evaluated, right?
Yeah.
So we obviously loved that flexibility, but we got enough C's and D's. So it's not like we didn't get C's and D's, but but it's very interesting though for us. Like me personally, I don't know about others, but I got enough A's and enough D's, right? Because you kind of almost focused on the stuff that you love, right?
Absolutely.
So well, right? And the other, did, and obviously, so that was this. But so Abhishek, when we were sitting for campus placement, right, half-heartedly, but sitting because we had these offers abroad.
Yeah.
But we were very homesick from our parents. We would be like, okay, we want to be. My hometown is Delhi. Akash was from Kanpur, right? So both of us were very homesick, right? And what are we going to do? We really want to find something here. We don't want to go, so we have to do. So actually 2 interviews, and one of this person, I won't name the company, but 2 companies we went through and got rejected also from a couple. I think we applied for 4-5 or so, right, on this thing, right? And I think we wouldn't have done really well in the pre-screening test, what they would take. I don't even remember what they used to ask, but we must have not done well or whatever to do it. But in 2 of them, right, the organizers of the student organizers who help the campus placements people, they told the people that these guys, this is what these guys have done, right? So both for Akash and me, right, we were basically got into skipped they never told us obviously whether we did well in the test or not, but I think most likely they said, okay, whatever they got, let's at least take them through interview process, right? So obviously interview now, that's practical stuff, and we had more than enough practical worldwide this thing. So we aced at the this thing. I don't remember, Akash I think got one, and only one he sat for. I got two offers, but actually one of the person from the interview panel really spooked it. Actually both spooked in two different ways. One person from one that I got into, which was technically my selected job, actually said in the interview process, he said, Samay, all of this is okay, and I know you've managed, by now I've had 4 years, 5 years of managing people, raising funds, my first startup, right? Samay, this is all great, but you just need to remember that managing people when they're not paid, managing salaried people and managing people on this thing is very, and it's not like I was applying for a manager job, I was a fresh guy, but he made it too short to tell me he was a HR person, and such a sweet person, because 7 years later he reached out to me on LinkedIn. He said, do you remember I interviewed you? and I was talking, he was saying I was talking to my boss, and he was telling how he applied for the HR job at GreyOrange, right? So it's it's so amazing. But obviously he meant well. But he asked this question. It spooked me, right? Because I said, okay, what does that mean, right? And then right? The other interview was he spooked me from a technology point of view. Right? He said, this is all great, but the first couple of 5 years lagenge for you to actually reach, right? Doing actual stuff, you have to first put in the hard work, right? Now, of course, I think hard work was never we used to work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. So hard work was never the problem. But just the fact that there was almost this ceiling, hierarchy ceiling of learning. So we started unwantedly, right? We started because we really felt scared. Akash and I, when we talked, we felt scared. We'll lose, we felt really good about all the stuff we knew we're building. So we said, we'll get behind in technology by 1 or 2 years if we end up, not starting. So we started out GreyOrange, and apart from our parents, all the relatives, we said, यार इतना सब सही कर रहे थे, न्यूज़पेपर में आर्टिकल्स आ रहे थे, क्या हुआ, जॉब नहीं मिली, right? And company start करनी, and that's why I tell you that even then, had GreyOrange not been where it is, today of course it's come miles away, but even what it did 5 years ago, right? I don't think we could have done the change, right, to the system as it did, right? And the rest is history.
Yeah, I can completely sense that you entered first year, you were punching above your weight. You graduated, you were punching above your weight. So you had this tendency to always punch above weight. If it was someone else, they'd think, hey, we need to learn all the courses in mechanical or electronics before we even start thinking of building something. Maybe even get a master's or a PhD. So how did that get into your DNA? That, hey, it's okay to punch above your weight and it's not too bad.
So I will tell you, I had advantage, right? Let's just say this thing. So in my school years, right? This thing, in my 10th class, right? I took part in a competition at the state level, something on something, right? And I actually didn't I chickened away from doing the presentation. I did the work, but I chickened away from the presentation. And big story short, the teacher, right, she came to me after the presentation because I got somebody else to present and do this stuff, right? So she said, Samay, I know the content you were doing and I know the work you were doing, right? But why did you not present it, right? Or why didn't you show it, right? And I was like, no. I think I'm like, I had stage fright and all the good stuff. I said, I'm, like, I didn't do it because I thought it would not be best, like, to do it. I'm not ready for it, right? And she was kind enough. This is our computer and science teacher. She was kind enough that she actually said, hey, I'll give you another shot. If you want to come tomorrow and present to us, right, after school, come do it. I prepared, I went and did, and who knows how good or bad it was, but she really encouraged, saying, hey, Samay, I think had you presented this there, you would have definitely been selected from the school, but unfortunately the results are done and we can't, do something unfair, right? That really hit. And that's why, Abhishek, for me, the biggest life lesson, and it still happens absolutely today, as of today also, right? That what punches you, right, is what, if you learn from it, right? And most people, when they get punched, I feel like actually externalize it, right? Like when they get punched, they externalize it as like, usne mujhe ye nahi kiya, usne ye nahi kiya, right? When you get punched, if you just understand this deep understanding of, right, that you cannot change others, you can only change how you react to it, right? So that had happened, and as a result, in my 11th class, right, there's a robot competition that came up, and I don't think there were robots also, right? And they were like, hey, anybody wants to apply? We're like, sure, I'll try this out, right? And we we didn't know Roomba existed at that time, but we built a vacuum cleaning robot. I built, with my school friend, built a vacuum cleaning robot in 11th, right? And when I built that in 11th, and we ended up winning India #1, right? And we went to Thailand, and but it was a small thing, but at school in Delhi and all that fun stuff. So when I came to Pilani, and where we were being introduced / ranked, right? Yeah. So this came out, right? Came out, right? And and so as a result, I reached the Rob Labs, right? But somewhere in middle, there's a senior of mine who actually works in GreyOrange now, but at that time, right, a senior of mine, he said this to me. He said, Samay, ये सब लोग ये Apogee की, you remember, if you connect back, first one was Apogee. He said, ये सब लोग Apogee में जाते हैं, इनको किसी को पता कुछ होता नहीं है, तेरे को सच में at least पता है, right? Why don't you actually give this a real shot, right? And I'm just, so again, we are. I would love to say, Abhishek, the takeaway story, right? I'd love to say that I was hitting above the, above my weight class, or hitting punching and aggression, right? But I think it's a combination of your experiences and the people who get you there, right? And if you're just grateful to that, right, and don't forget that, I think that's the key, right? It's like, if you see, I can go back to whatever my 9th class, which is whatever, I'm 15, 14 years old, right? So you keep going and keep growing. And I would say nothing changes even today, right? It's the same thing. You just keep learning, right? That's kind of the takeaway.
That's a really, I guess you attribute environment at the right places, like when reflecting on maybe.
It's ours to take opportunity, right? But its opportunities are always grabbing. It's ours to grab, right? Yeah. But it's absolutely 97% of what happens to you around you, because they leave one to the other, to the other, to the other. You can never do that in. And, I really believe in the concept of when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That's not changed in all these 15, 20 years, right? It's the scale has changed, the stuff has changed, right? But it's still the same, right? Core message. Chalo. This was really great. Thank you so much for making me remember all this. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you doing this.